The world of emergency dispatchers exists in a perpetual twilight, a hidden realm where the mundane clashes violently with the catastrophic. It is a place of flickering screens and hushed urgency, where unseen voices weave the fragile fabric of safety and order. Within these walls, heroes are forged not by bulletproof vests or flashing sirens, but by the unwavering calm in their voices, the precision of their questions, and the relentless speed of their fingers dancing across keyboards. They are the first responders to chaos, the silent guardians who orchestrate aid from behind the scenes, their names rarely known, their faces rarely seen, yet their actions define the line between life and death for countless others. Inside the sprawling heart of the city's emergency services, the dispatch center hummed with a low electric energy. Rows of consoles stretched into the distance, each manned by a dispatcher bathed in the cool glow of multiple monitors. Flashing indicator lights pulsed rhythmically, tracking units across a digital map of the sprawling metropolis. The air was a symphony of overlapping audio feeds, police chatter, fire department alerts, EMS directives, a constant, almost hypnotic drone that seasoned ears learned to filter and interpret. Coffee cups stood sentinel beside headsets, and the scent of stale caffeine mingled with the faint metallic tang of overworked electronics. It was a controlled chaos, a testament to intricate systems and the extraordinary individuals who ran them. Among them sat Sarah, her posture erect, her gaze fixed on the ever-shifting data before her. Her fingers moved with practiced grace across the keyboard, typing faster than most could speak, her ears attuned to the subtle inflections in the voices that poured through her headset. Sarah wasn't just experienced, she was a legend among her peers, a dispatcher whose calm demeanor was as unshakable as bedrock, masking years of harrowing calls and personal sacrifices. Each flicker of her eyes held stories of lives saved and tragedies averted, moments that had etched themselves deep into her soul, leaving behind a wisdom that transcended mere training. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, a practical style for a woman whose focus could not afford distraction, and the faint lines around her eyes spoke of countless sleepless nights spent listening, guiding, and ultimately protecting. This particular Tuesday evening had begun like many others, a steady flow of domestic disputes, fender benders, and the occasional petty theft. The rhythm was familiar, a predictable ebb and flow of urban life. Dispatchers exchanged weary glances, shared quiet jokes, and refilled their mugs, bracing for the inevitable late-night surge that always followed the city's slow descent into darkness. The air conditioner whirred, a constant companion to the low murmur of voices and the click of keys. It was, by all accounts, a typical shift start, a fragile calm before an as-yet unseen storm. Yet, something in the air felt different to Sarah, a subtle shift in the atmospheric pressure, a whisper of unease that prickled at the back of her neck. Then the call came in. It was seemingly routine, a reported noise complaint, possibly a break-in, at a quiet residential street on the city's outskirts. Sarah took the call, her voice level and reassuring as she gathered details from the agitated caller. The woman on the other end described muffled shouts and what sounded like breaking glass. Sarah's intuition, honed by 2 decades of listening to the nuances of human fear, twitched. The caller's voice, though frightened, held a peculiar edge, a forced calm that struck Sarah as deeply unsettling. It wasn't just fear. There was something else, something carefully hidden beneath the surface. As she logged the incident, assigning it a priority, a cold knot formed in her stomach. This wasn't just a simple break-in. Units 212 and 215 respond to a possible 459 at 1422 Elmwood Drive. Caller reports muffled shouts, sounds of breaking glass. Female caller sounds distressed, Sarah transmitted, her voice betraying none of the apprehension she felt. Just as the units acknowledged, a sudden muffled bang echoed through the open line from the caller's end, followed by a sharp, terrified gasp. The line went dead. Sarah's eyes widened, a chilling premonition washing over her. The routine call had just shattered into something far more sinister. The silence from the deadline was deafening, a stark contrast to the frantic energy that now surged through Sarah's veins. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, updating the incident status from a mere possible 459 to something far more urgent, a red flag blooming on her screen. Units 212, 215, expedite. Caller's line went dead after a loud bang. "Sounds like an active situation," she barked into her headset, her calm facade cracking just enough to convey the gravity of the shift. Before she could even finish, another call flooded in, then another, both from neighbors reporting gunshots and screams emanating from 1422 Elmwood Drive. The quiet residential street had erupted into a full-blown crisis. Almost immediately, the radio chatter intensified, a cacophony of voices vying for attention. Sarah expertly filtered through the noise, her mind racing, piecing together fragments of information. Initial reports confirmed multiple armed suspects inside the residence, and tragically, the first mention of a possible hostage. The incident was no longer a break-in, it was rapidly devolving into a confirmed hostage situation, a volatile powder keg ready to ignite. As the gravity of the situation solidified, Sarah's eyes scanned the responding unit assignments. Her breath hitched. Unit 212. Officer Miller. A cold dread seeped into her bones, chilling her to the marrow. Miller, her younger brother, David. He was new to the force, barely a year out of the academy, still brimming with an eager, almost naive enthusiasm for police work. He had chosen this patrol zone specifically because it was normally quiet, a place where he could learn the ropes without too much immediate danger. Sarah had teased him about it, affectionately calling it his training wheels beat. Now those training wheels were about to be put to the ultimate test. David, completely unaware of his sister's involvement on the other end of the radio, was heading straight into a nightmare. A fierce internal battle raged within Sarah. Her professional duty, honed over 2 decades, demanded absolute impartiality, a steady hand guiding all units through chaos. But beneath that hardened exterior, a sister's heart pounded with a primeval fear. Images of David, young and vulnerable, flashed through her mind. The last family dinner, his easy laugh, his unwavering belief in doing good. How could she possibly remain detached, a mere voice in his ear, when it was her brother facing down armed suspects? The lines between her personal life and her professional obligation blurred, twisted into an agonizing knot. The dispatch center became a maelstrom of activity. Every available dispatcher was now scrambling, their screens ablaze with flashing codes and incident updates. Calls poured in from every direction, frantic neighbors, worried relatives, even mistaken reports from blocks away, each contributing to an overwhelming tide of fragmented, often conflicting information. "We have multiple reports of shots fired, possibly a rifle," one dispatcher shouted. "Caller states 3 suspects, all armed, wearing dark clothing," another added. Sarah's own headset crackled with a dizzying array of voices. Officers requesting backup, field supervisors trying to establish a perimeter, frantic cries from the initial caller's phone that had somehow reconnected, only to be filled with muffled screams and threats. The sheer volume of data, the raw urgency of it all threatened to overwhelm even her seasoned senses. Then, a chilling report cut through the noise, silencing the room for a terrifying beat. "Unit 212, we're taking fire. First shots reported, multiple rounds." The voice was David's partner, strained and breathless. A jolt, sharp and electric, coursed through Sarah. Her breath caught in her throat, her hand flying instinctively to her mouth, stifling a gasp that threatened to betray her professional composure. The first shots. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was an active firefight. David was in the thick of it. The storm had not merely gathered, it had broken. The frantic reports of gunfire had barely faded when a commanding presence entered the dispatch center, cutting through the rising tension like a sharp blade. Commander Thompson, a man whose reputation preceded him, strode directly to the incident command station. His gaze, steely and unwavering, swept across the room, assessing the chaos with an almost unsettling calm. Thompson was a veteran, his face etched with the lines of countless crises managed, his posture radiating an authority that demanded immediate attention. He didn't need to shout. His mere presence was enough to galvanize the scattered efforts. He absorbed the fragmented reports, his mind already piecing together the grim mosaic of the situation. Without a moment's hesitation, he began issuing orders, his voice deep and resonant. "All right, listen up. Perimeter needs to be tightened. No civilian ingress or egress. I want air support overhead now. Get me a tactical team ETA, and I want an incident map updated every 60 seconds. Sarah, Thompson's eyes locked onto her, a silent recognition passing between them, a shared understanding of the immense pressure now resting on their shoulders. You're on primary communications for Unit 212. Keep them updated, relay all incoming intelligence, and ensure they have a clear channel. I need real-time intel from the scene, direct from Miller. The assignment hit Sarah with the force of a physical blow. Primary communications for David's unit. Thompson, with his sharp instincts, had unknowingly intensified her personal struggle, binding her fate even more tightly to her brother's. Every word she transmitted, every instruction she relayed would now be directly for him, for his partner, for their survival. Her breath hitched, a cold knot forming in her stomach, but she nodded, forcing a professional mask over her terror. This was her duty, her cross to bear. She couldn't falter, not now. As Sarah began to establish her dedicated channel, sifting through the deluge of information, a jarring inconsistency caught her attention. A report had come in minutes ago about a possible secondary exit, a service tunnel leading away from the building's rear. She had overheard Dispatcher Owens, a relatively new hire prone to nervousness, dismiss it as unconfirmed chatter and failed to relay it up the chain. Now, with Thompson demanding every scrap of intelligence, Sarah realized the potential gravity of Owens's oversight. She glanced at Owens, who was frantically typing, eyes darting nervously between screens. A surge of icy frustration bordering on anger coursed through Sarah. In this environment, a single withheld detail, a moment of negligence, could cost lives. The incident map on Sarah's screen showed the building as a fortress. But the service tunnel, if it existed, could be a critical escape route for the suspects, or, conversely, a path for a tactical insertion. Sarah's trust, usually unwavering in her colleagues, began to erode. Was it incompetence, or something more insidious? The thought, fleeting but chilling, sent a shiver down her spine. Under such extreme pressure, every action, every omission was magnified, dissected, and weighed against the ultimate cost. The lives of officers, including her brother, hung in the balance, and the smallest crack in the foundation of trust could prove catastrophic. Just as Sarah was about to challenge Owens, to demand clarification on the tunnel report, a raw, desperate plea crackled through her headset, shattering the fragile calm she had meticulously constructed. It was David's voice, strained and hoarse, barely recognizable amidst the sounds of close-quarters combat. "This is Unit 212. We're pinned down, taking heavy fire from the East Wing, requesting immediate backup. We're running out of options here." The urgency in his voice, the sheer terror, sent a jolt of ice through Sarah's veins. Her brother was in dire straits. She looked at the incident map again. Resources were stretched thin, tactical teams still en route. The desperate plea echoed in the tense silence of the dispatch center, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. The storm had broken, and David was caught right in its thunderous heart, screaming for help that might not arrive in time. The chilling desperation in David's voice reverberated not just in Sarah's ears, but deep within her very soul. He was trapped, cornered, his unit outgunned and facing an enemy whose numbers and intent remained terrifyingly unclear. The images flashed in her mind. David, young and idealistic, now fighting for his life in a building that had become a death trap. Every second that passed felt like an eternity, each breath a painful reminder of the thin line separating life from oblivion. His plea for immediate backup was a raw wound, exposed for all in the dispatch center to hear. Yet the tactical teams were still minutes away, entangled in city traffic, navigating the labyrinthine streets that now felt like an impassable barrier. Sarah's hands, usually so steady on the console, trembled imperceptibly. Her professional duty warred with an overwhelming, primal urge to protect her brother. The rules, the protocols, the chain of command, they all blurred into insignificance against the stark reality of David's peril. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her, sharpening her focus, pushing her past the boundaries of conventional procedure. She knew the city's underbelly, its forgotten alleys and unmarked service routes, better than anyone. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up secondary maps, cross-referencing obscure municipal blueprints that rarely saw the light of day. She was pushing boundaries, bypassing the rigid hierarchy, directly contacting units that weren't assigned to this incident. Units that were closer, faster, more agile. Her career, her standing, everything she had built, suddenly seemed inconsequential compared to the flickering image of David's face in her mind. She risked it all, driven by a sister's love and a dispatcher's innate understanding of urban geography. Just as she was about to transmit a risky, unauthorized redirection to a nearby K9 unit, the world around her seemed to fracture. The screens in front of her flickered, then died, plunging her console into an eerie, silent darkness. The audio feed from David's unit, his desperate cries for help, dissolved into a flat, deafening static. A critical system malfunction, a communication blackout. It was as if the universe itself had conspired to sever David's last lifeline, isolating him completely at the most crucial, terrifying moment. A collective gasp rippled through the dispatch center as other screens also began to fail, plunging parts of the room into flickering semi-darkness. Panic, cold and insidious, began to creep into the controlled chaos of the room. Then, a surprising voice cut through the rising tension. It was Owens, the dispatcher whose earlier oversight had sparked Sarah's distrust. His face, usually pale and drawn with anxiety, was now etched with a focused determination Sarah hadn't seen before. "My backup system's still running," he shouted, pointing to a small, older monitor tucked away in a corner, often used for training simulations. "It's slow, but it's independent. I can try to reroute their comms through the old emergency repeater. Might get a burst through." He was already working, his fingers flying with an unexpected agility, bypassing the main server, using a forgotten analog pathway. The redemption was subtle, unspoken, but palpable. He was stepping up, using an unconventional method to re-establish contact, driven by the shared urgency of saving officers' lives. A faint, distorted crackle emerged from Sarah's headset, then David's voice, broken and fragmented, like whispers from another dimension. "Down east need now." The connection was tenuous, a thread barely holding, but it was there. Hope, fragile but fierce, ignited in Sarah's chest. Owens had provided a lifeline, a temporary bridge across the chasm of silence. But the connection was unstable, constantly threatening to break, and time was an enemy that refused to yield. Sarah knew this was it, the moment of truth. She could relay the information about the approaching K9 unit, a unit she had personally diverted, but sending them into an unknown, potentially hostile environment without full tactical support was a colossal risk. It could save David, but it could also endanger the K9 officers, sending them into a blind ambush. Her mind raced, weighing the lives of the K9 team against her brother's fading voice. The decision had to be made in a fraction of a second, a choice that would forever define her, a choice that could save David but potentially condemn others. The decision, though agonizing, was swift. Sarah's voice, though outwardly calm, held an undercurrent of desperate urgency as she transmitted the K9 unit's new directive. Overriding standard protocols. K9-7, proceed to Sector Gamma. Approach from the east, verbal confirmation only. Repeat, verbal only. She chose to gamble, banking on the element of surprise and the K9 unit's specialized training. The heavy weight of that choice settled on her shoulders, a silent promise to herself that she would bear the consequences, whatever they may be. Meanwhile, within the confines of the dilapidated warehouse, David Miller and his remaining team were cornered. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of fear. Bullets ripped through the corrugated metal walls, embedding themselves with sickening thuds. They were pinned down behind overturned crates, their ammunition dwindling, their options evaporating. David, his face streaked with grime and sweat, barked orders, his voice raw but unwavering. "Hold the line, don't let them flank us." He returned fire, his movements precise, almost mechanical, despite the terror gnawing at his gut. The suspects, numbering at least 5, pressed their advantage, their shouts echoing menacingly through the cavernous space. Sarah, her eyes glued to the flickering, fragmented schematics on Owens's old monitor, guided David through the chaos. Her voice, miraculously clear through the unstable connection, was a lifeline. David, move your team to the north wall. There's a structural beam. Offers better cover. Suspects are consolidating on your south flank. She was a maestro of mayhem, orchestrating a desperate ballet of survival from miles away, masking her terror with professional detachment. Every word was a calculated risk, every instruction a prayer. The seconds stretched into an eternity, each one punctuated by the staccato rhythm of gunfire. Then came the scream, a sharp, guttural cry that cut through the cacophony. Officer Chen, a rookie barely out of the academy, crumpled to the ground, a crimson stain blossoming rapidly on his uniform. David's heart seized. He saw the tremor in Chen's hand, the glassy look in his eyes. He was gravely wounded. A wave of ice washed over David. He had to make a choice: stay and fight, risking more casualties, or attempt a desperate retreat to secure Chen's life. The decision was instantaneous. "Fall back! Get Chen out of here! I'll cover!" he yelled, laying down a suppressing fire that momentarily stalled the suspect's advance. Just as the situation seemed utterly hopeless, a new voice crackled through David's comms, relayed by Sarah. "Miller, listen carefully. There's a disused loading bay, northeast corner. It's overgrown but accessible. K9-7 is inbound, approaching from that direction. They'll create a diversion." Sarah, remembering an old forgotten city map from her early days in dispatch, had found an unexpected route, a forgotten artery in the city's concrete labyrinth. Her knowledge, dismissed by many as trivial, was now proving to be a game-changer. As David provided cover, he caught a glimpse of one of the suspects. A flash of recognition, cold and unsettling, shot through him. The man, tall with a distinctive scar above his left eye, was Mark Shadow Thorne. Thorne, a ghost from David's past, a former informant he'd worked with years ago, now turned rogue. A wave of personal betrayal, sharp and bitter, washed over him, adding another layer of grim determination to his fight. Suddenly the air was rent by the piercing barks of police K9s, followed by the shouts of officers. The element of surprise had worked. K9-7, guided by Sarah's uncanny directions, breached the northeast loading bay, their entry explosive and decisive. The suspects, caught off guard, scattered, their organized assault dissolving into panicked chaos. The warehouse erupted into a violent, decisive confrontation, the sounds of battle now favoring the forces of law and order. David, his heart pounding, knew this was their chance. The tide had turned. The cacophony of gunfire, the snarling of K9s, and the frantic shouts of officers, which had moments ago filled the dispatch center's airwaves, abruptly ceased. A profound, almost deafening silence descended upon the room, broken only by the crackle of static from the open channels. Dispatchers, who had been hunched over their consoles, their faces etched with acute tension, slowly straightened, their eyes wide, searching each other's faces for confirmation. The collective exhale was almost palpable, a wave of relief that swept through the weary team. Sarah, her hands still hovering over the keyboard, felt the adrenaline drain from her body with brutal speed. Her muscles, rigid for what felt like an eternity, suddenly gave way, and she sagged against her chair, the emotional weight of the past hour crashing down upon her like a physical blow. A cold sweat slicked her skin, and her vision blurred at the edges as she battled the sudden onset of nausea. Then a voice, raspy but undeniably David's, broke the quiet. "All units, scene secure. Suspects apprehended. Officer Chen. Officer Chen is stable, being prepped for transport. We've got multiple injuries, but everyone else accounted for." The words were a lifeline, pulling Sarah back from the precipice of despair. Miller was alive. David was alive. A shaky, breathy sob escaped her lips, quickly stifled, as she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. The confirmation, though delivered with the weary tone of a man who had stared into the abyss, brought with it an overwhelming wave of gratitude. The dispatch center, still reeling, quickly shifted gears. The immediate crisis had passed, but the aftermath was just beginning. Reports flooded in, detailing the human cost of the confrontation. Officer Chen, the rookie, was in critical but stable condition, his future uncertain. 2 other officers from David's unit sustained non-life-threatening injuries, and one of the suspects was also wounded. The sheer scale of the incident, the close call with tragedy, left an indelible mark on everyone present. For David, the physical pain of minor scrapes and bruises was overshadowed by the gnawing ache in his heart for Chen, and the unsettling revelation of Thorne's involvement. As he stood amidst the controlled chaos of the secured warehouse, watching paramedics tend to the wounded, a cold, hard resolve began to crystallize within him. Thorne. The name echoed in his mind, a venomous whisper. The betrayal felt personal, a wound that went deeper than any bullet. David knew, with an unwavering certainty, that he would pursue every lead, delve into every dark corner, until he understood the full scope of Thorne's motivations and the shadowy network that had led him to this point. Justice, he vowed, would be served, not just for the officers and civilians caught in the crossfire, but for the twisted path Thorne had chosen. Back in the dispatch center, Commander Thompson moved through the room, offering quiet words of commendation and support. He paused beside Sarah, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. "You did good, Sarah. Damn good." His voice was gruff, but his eyes held a depth of understanding that transcended mere words. Sarah simply nodded, unable to articulate the maelstrom of emotions swirling within her. The immediate danger had receded, but the echoes of the violence, the chilling memory of David's voice under fire, and the haunting image of Chen's collapse would linger. The investigation into the motives behind the elaborate hostage situation, the hunt for the broader network, had only just begun, promising a long, arduous road ahead. The silence in the dispatch center was no longer one of tension, but of profound exhaustion, a quiet testament to the battle that had just been fought and won, yet leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and wounded souls. The dispatch center hummed now with a different kind of energy, a heavy quiet replacing the frantic urgency that had gripped it just moments before. Each dispatcher moved with a somber grace, their faces etched with the lingering shadows of the recent crisis. The flashing lights on the massive display board still cycled through calls, but the attention that had been hyper-focused on one critical incident now diffused across a myriad of smaller, less dramatic events. They processed information, relayed messages, and coordinated responses, but beneath the practiced professionalism, a collective exhaustion settled like a thick fog. The adrenaline, once a furious torrent, had receded, leaving behind a profound sense of emptiness and the cold, hard weight of what they had just endured. The quiet hum of the machines seemed to underscore the fragility of life and the relentless demands of their profession. Hours later, Sarah sat across from Miller in a small, sterile hospital waiting room. The air was thick with unspoken words, the sterile scent of antiseptic, doing little to mask the lingering scent of fear and smoke that still clung to them both. Miller, his arm in a sling and a bandage adorning his temple, looked pale but resolute. His eyes, usually bright with youthful enthusiasm, now held a depth of experience far beyond his years. He reached across the small table, his uninjured hand covering hers. "You saved me, Sarah," he murmured, his voice raspy with emotion. "You and David, you both did." Sarah's eyes welled up, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "We're family, David," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Always." The shared understanding, the raw acknowledgement of the knife edge they had walked, forged an even deeper bond between them, a silent promise to always protect one another. Back at the precinct, Commander Thompson gathered the dispatch team, his usual stern demeanor softened by a profound sense of gratitude. He stood before them, a figure of authority and quiet strength. "What you all did today," he began, his voice resonating with sincerity, "was nothing short of heroic. You were the eyes, the ears, the very lifeline for our officers out there. Every single one of you rose to the occasion under unimaginable pressure. This department, this city, owes you a debt of gratitude." He looked at each of them, his gaze lingering on Sarah. "The work you do, often unseen, is the bedrock of our emergency response. Never forget that." His words, delivered with genuine appreciation, were a balm to their weary souls, a much-needed recognition of their vital, often thankless contributions. Miller, meanwhile, was grappling with the unsettling revelations about Thorne. From the preliminary interrogations and evidence gathered, a clearer, yet more disturbing picture began to emerge. Thorne wasn't just a rogue actor. He was a desperate man caught in the tangled web of a far larger criminal enterprise, driven by a twisted sense of loyalty and a desperate need for money. The motive wasn't merely greed, it was a deeper, systemic issue of exploitation and coercion. Thorne had been manipulated, his vulnerabilities expertly preyed upon, turning him into a pawn in a game far beyond his comprehension. Miller felt a pang of conflicting emotions, anger at the betrayal, but also a chilling understanding of how easily someone could be ensnared. The true enemy, he realized, was not just Thorne, but the insidious forces that corrupted individuals and orchestrated such violence. Later that week, amidst the quiet hum of the dispatch floor, a figure approached Sarah's console. It was Michael, the dispatcher who had initially miscommunicated crucial intelligence, causing a ripple of doubt and friction during the crisis. His shoulders were slumped, his face etched with remorse. "Sarah," he began, his voice low and hesitant, I messed up. Badly. I let the pressure get to me, and I jeopardized everything. I am so sorry." Sarah turned, her expression unreadable. The anger she had felt was still there, a simmering ember, but it was now tempered by the shared trauma, the collective experience of survival. She saw not just the mistake, but the raw, vulnerable human behind it. "We all make mistakes, Michael," she said softly, her voice devoid of judgment. "What matters is what we learn from them." Michael nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes, a silent promise of growth and renewed trust passing between them. The incident had irrevocably altered Sarah. The adrenaline had faded, but the echoes lingered, a constant reminder of the razor-thin line between order and chaos. She found herself questioning everything, the endless stream of emergencies, the constant pressure, the emotional toll. Was this sustainable? Could she continue to bear such a heavy burden? Yet, as she looked around at her colleagues, at the unwavering dedication etched on their faces, a different thought began to take root. She was good at this. She was vital. Her experience, her intuition, her calm under pressure, these were invaluable assets. The emotional cost was immense, but so was the satisfaction of knowing she had played a crucial role in saving lives. The thought of leaving, of abandoning her post, felt like a betrayal of the very purpose that now defined her. Sarah knew, with a dawning clarity, that her journey in dispatch was far from over. This wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning, tempered by fire, strengthened by resolve. The dispatch center, a place of unseen heroes, continued its relentless rhythm, a testament to the unyielding spirit of service that defined its occupants. The incident, while harrowing, had paradoxically strengthened the bonds within the community it served. Local news channels, once quick to sensationalize, now offered nuanced reports, highlighting the intricate dance between police response and the crucial, often invisible role of dispatchers. Public forums buzzed with discussions about the valor of the first responders, but also, for the first time, a genuine appreciation for the voices on the other end of the line. Donations poured into support funds for injured officers and their families, but a significant portion was also directed towards upgrading dispatch technology and offering mental health resources for the unsung heroes who bore witness to humanity's darkest moments. The community had seen the fragile thread connecting chaos and order, and they recognized the hands that held it steady. Sarah, standing by her console during a quiet moment, watched a new recruit, wide-eyed and eager, fumbling with the complex interface. A soft smile touched her lips. The incident had solidified her resolve. The initial questioning of her path had given way to an undeniable sense of purpose. Her hands, once trembling from the aftershocks of the crisis, now moved with a renewed, confident grace across the keyboard. She had faced the abyss and emerged not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. The emotional toll remained, a quiet hum beneath the surface, but it no longer threatened to overwhelm her. Instead, it fueled her, transforming into empathy, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to her role. She decided to stay, not out of obligation but out of a profound understanding of her own value. She began mentoring the new dispatchers, sharing not just protocols and procedures, but the nuanced art of listening, the unspoken language of fear and hope, and the critical importance of remaining calm when the world around them descended into pandemonium. Her voice, once a lifeline in crisis, now became a guiding light for those just beginning their journey in the unseen world of emergency response. Miller, after weeks of physical therapy and counseling, finally returned to duty. The scars remained, both visible and invisible, but they were badges of resilience, not weakness. He walked with a slight limp, a constant reminder of the day he faced down overwhelming odds, but his gaze was steadier, his resolve sharper. The experience had forged a new kind of officer, one tempered by the brutal realities of the streets, but also deeply appreciative of the intricate network of support that held the line. His relationship with Sarah had deepened, morphing into a profound mutual respect. He now understood, with a clarity he couldn't have imagined before, the immense pressure she endured, the silent battles she fought daily. He would often call her, not just for professional updates, but for a moment of shared understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of the unique burdens they both carried. He saw her not just as his sister, but as a pillar of strength, an essential cog in the machinery of safety. The dispatch center continued its ceaseless vigil, a quiet bastion against the encroaching darkness. Outside, the city pulsed with life, largely unaware of the constant, vigilant watch maintained within these walls. The screens flickered, the radios crackled, and the voices, calm and clear, continued to guide, to reassure, to save. It was a testament to resilience, to dedication, and to the enduring spirit of service that bound them all. The work was often thankless, the sacrifices unseen, but the impact was undeniable, etched in the countless lives touched, protected, and ultimately saved. In the quiet hum of the dispatch center, the true heroes continued their vital, unwavering watch, the invisible backbone of a world that desperately needed them. Their story was not one of flashy heroics, but of steadfast commitment, a powerful closing statement to the enduring spirit of those who answered the call, day in and day out.